Jamaica, and we believe that fossil fuels are really bad for our country. Energy consumption per year in the United States is 97 quadrillion BTUs. 80% of this energy comes from fossil fuels, including oil, natural gas, and coal. These fossil fuels cause many environmental problems, such as global warming, ozone depletion, and habitat destruction. We also have a finite amount of these resources in this world. It is imperative that the United States begins in investing in a renewable energy source that does not have adverse environmental effects of those we are currently using.
So the question then becomes, what renewable energy source should the United States invest in for future sustainability? And as we were doing our research, 4 major energy sources came to the forefront, and those are hydroelectric power, solar energy, wind energy, and fuel cells, which are machines that generate electricity from hydrogen gas. And so as we're looking into all of these energy sources, it's important to note different categories that distinguish each of these from each other and could say which are better from the other. And one of those is how environmentally friendly they are. So all of these energy sources are considered clean, and by that we mean that they don't create any pollution in their use or after construction. And so fuel cells are the worst of these. They generate 325 grams per kilowatt hour of CO2 in their construction. So that means that in their construction it requires the use of machines which run on fossil fuels, and the fossil fuels then release CO2. Hydroelectric is technically the second least at releasing CO2, but hydroelectric power comes with other pollution issues, and that is that when you make a dam, you restrict water flow down the river, and so there's an increasing concentration of salt and toxins, which is harmful for aquatic life down the river. And then also upstream from the river, there's an increase in sediment buildup, and when that sediment builds up, it can build up toxins also in the sediment, and this causes these toxins can leach into the groundwater, which then causes groundwater pollution. Solar is the second least pollution, and wind is the cleanest at 7.6 grams per kilowatt hour of CO2 emitted in construction. So when we were first looking at this category, I didn't think that cleanliness would be a really big deal because they're all considered clean, so I thought that would be zero pollution for all of them. But it actually turns out that there's a pretty big stratification in the amount of CO2 that's produced in the construction of all of these energy sources.
So as Tate said, when researching these energy sources, you need to keep in mind many aspects of them. One of these is cost. When examining the cost, we need to make sure that the yield provided by the energy source is enough to cover what the people are paying for, making the energy source a cost-effective one. As I began my research, I thought hydroelectric would be the cheapest one since we have been using it for years. And when I researched, I found out fuel cells are the most expensive ones, costing $55 per kilowatt hour. But the technology is advancing and the price is dropping regularly. Solar energy costs 12 to 30 cents per kilowatt hour, making it very cheap, but the technology does not yet exist to make this a cost-effective energy source. Just like solar, wind costs very little, but it's also not advanced enough to be cost-effective. And hydroelectric, as I believed in the beginning, is the cheapest one, costing 0.85 cents per kilowatt hour. This is due to the advancements in technology, and the price is not going to drop as significantly as the others due to the fact that we have been using it for years. And when examining the cost, it's important to keep in mind various aspects of them, but also we need to research the efficiency of them.
To be efficient is to be capable of producing without wasting time, energy, or materials. There's no point in investing into a renewable energy source if we are not able to, or if the renewable energy source isn't able to satisfy the United States needs. Hydroelectricity uses 90% of its available energy. It only produces 4 kilowatt hours per piece squared per year. Solar energy lacks the technology to be an effective, efficient source, and it only produces 5.7 kilowatt hours per piece squared per year. Wind produces 9 kilowatt hours per piece squared per year, and that's due to wind being extremely unpredictable. So when going into this project, I thought that fuel cells would be the most efficient of all the renewable energy sources, and it ended up being true. Fuel cells produce 4,500 kilowatt hours per piece squared per year, and that's due to it producing electricity chemically rather than by combustion.
So efficiency is a very important category when determining which energy source would be the most beneficial to invest in for the future. But another major aspect of each of these individual sources is their potential. Currently, hydroelectric power represents 6.6 of all the electricity generated in the United States, and it has the potential to generate up to 15,000 terawatts per hour. And it can do this by adding new turbines to pre-existing dams, building new, more productive dams, and producing high numbers of smaller scale hydro plants. Wind power currently generates 4.1% of all the electricity that comes from the United States, and its potential can be maximized offshore. These offshore facilities give wind turbines access to more reliable, constant, and stronger wind, and there are many new methods of these offshore facilities that are being developed by scientists. These are artificial islands, which include wind farms, and wind turbines that are on floating foundations in the ocean. Currently, solar power represents 0.2% of all electricity generated in the United States. And this is a surprisingly low number. However, the potential for solar power is very high. Scientists are currently developing a new method of solar power called thermodynamic solar power plants, which are predicted to surpass PV or photovoltaic cells very soon in production. These power plants can generate up to 270,000 megawatts per year and are much cheaper than photovoltaic cells due to the price of silicon. Now, fuel cells at this moment do not take up a significant amount of electricity that's generated in the United States. However, they actually have an infinite amount of potential due to the fact that as long as the necessary amount of fuel and oxidants are supplied to the fuel cells, then they can run potentially forever. So when I first started this research, I thought that solar would dominate the potential category because the amount of energy that we can gather from the sun is obviously infinite. However, I greatly underestimated fuel cells because they can also run infinitively and they produce a lot more megawatts per year and per hour than solar power.
So there are a lot of other advantages and disadvantages to each of these energy sources that are miscellaneous, that don't fit into any of the categories that we've discussed so far. And one of those disadvantages comes with solar, and that is that solar's efficiency is actually cut in half because the sun only shines for half the day. So because of that, we can only actually harness solar power for half of the day. Another con that comes with wind turbines is that basically they commit bird genocide. And wind turbines are responsible for the death of 140,000 to 328,000 birds every year. And this massive amount of aerial death is having detrimental effects. It's wrecking ecosystems across the nation. An actual advantage that comes with hydroelectric is that the dams that are made create lakes behind them, and these lakes can be used for recreational activities for people that live near them. And these activities include swimming, boating, and fishing. Fuel cells come with the best added benefits, and that is that they can support transportation needs. And 28% of United States energy consumption is in the transportation sector. And this is a massive need that really needs to be met, that can't be met by any of the other energy sources. So fuel cells can actually provide energy that can be used for transportation, which is something that is a really key factor to bring in. And then also fuel cells can provide extra energy, and that is that when you have a fuel cell power plant, it creates heat, and this heat can be harnessed by heat pumps by the way of gas, which in turn turbine and generate electricity, which causes it to be even more efficient because it's creating extra energy.
So as we researched individually, we grew. But in conclusion, as a group, we reached that fuel cells would be the best energy source possible. Not only are they limitless, since they run on water, they're efficient and they have a high potential. They're versatile and scalable, and their only bad thing is the cost of them. So in conclusion, we think fuel cells are clean, affordable, would be clean, affordable, and could provide enough energy to suffice the U.S. needs, and will send the United States into an age of renewable energy. Thank you.
When you guys started off this process, how did you select the different strategies that you were going to use to gather or conduct your research? One of you.
So we basically, in the beginning, we each researched a different renewable energy source. For example, I was wind, he was hydroelectricity, and he was fuel cells and do with solar. And we all try to, we researched about efficiency, potential, and cleanliness. And then once we combined them, we separated into four other categories such as efficiency, potential, cleanliness, and cost. So that's how we all came together as a whole to make this presentation.
All right, thank you. What information did you need that you weren't able to find? And then tell me what you did to try to find it.
Well, I was researching potential specifically, and a really hard thing to find was the information on fuel cells. And the really bad thing was that most of the fuel cell sources that we were able to find were from companies that actually produce fuel cells, so the information was really biased. But eventually we did, and we talked to our AP Environmental Science teacher about some of the statistics of fuel cells and its potential and all that. So that's some information that was pretty hard to come by, but we ended up doing it, and I think it was reliable.
As you went through this process, were there additional questions that came to be that you didn't think about when you first entered?
Additional questions?
Yeah, did something else come up? You're like, I didn't think about that.
I don't think we thought much about the miscellaneous category, until the end. That's a lot of really important stuff. That solar energy is only half the day, and especially the transportation part of fuel cells. Those weren't things that we took into account beforehand. We just thought that there would be four major categories and we could stick to that. But that category actually ended up playing a really big role in our deciding of fuel cells as the best energy source to invest in.
By looking at the good versus the bad almost of them?
Yeah, and just things that weren't conventional. They just come along with that energy source being that energy source and not just strictly the cost or potential.
Right. And I guess this is for you, Anaki. Where did you grow as you went through this project?
So, as I said, I thought hydroelectric would be the cheapest, and it turned out that it was, but I believe the solar energy would be the best one possible, because this one is shining every day, and we can create energy every day. But I didn't know fuel cells could potentially be limitless and all this, because the technology does not yet exist that informed us all about that. But then as we researched, we began to know that fuel cells are limitless, they're very clean, and their only bad thing is cost, and that's what made me change my mind on what the answer would be.
All right, thank you guys.